Imagine for a moment that everything you've been taught about kindness is wrong. What if being good, being compassionate, was not always the best approach? Would that surprise you? We tend to see kindness as an undeniable virtue, a force for good that binds society together. But could it have a hidden cost? Could kindness, in the wrong hands or at the wrong time, be a fatal flaw? For Niccolò Machiavelli, the answer is clear. He warns us that excessive kindness, when misapplied, is not just ineffective but dangerous. And here's the truly unsettling part. Kindness, as we commonly understand it, might be one of the biggest reasons why power so easily slips away from those who possess it. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and enjoy this deep dive into the philosophy of power. In The Prince, Machiavelli delivers an uncomfortable truth. Politics is not about being virtuous, but about being effective. This stark philosophy clashes with our moral instincts. We're taught that being good leads to success, that fairness and integrity will always win. But history tells a different story. Those who've been seen as overly kind and morally pure often become the most vulnerable in power. In the political arena, kindness can be mistaken for weakness. If you are only good, only forgiving, you may become an easy target, a figure to be manipulated, deceived, or overthrown. The world, especially the world of power, is ruthless. Machiavelli does not argue that kindness is worthless, but rather that it should be used strategically. A leader must know when to show mercy and when to be ruthless. The moment a ruler acts out of kindness alone, they expose themselves to exploitation. But what about morality? Isn't kindness a moral duty? Machiavelli turns this assumption upside down. He challenges the idea that morality must always take precedence. To him, morality is often used as a tool for control, a way to make people obedient to the system rather than successful within it. In other words, the morality we are taught is not necessarily designed to help us thrive, but to keep us in check. For a ruler, kindness should never be a goal in itself, but a means to an end. Machiavelli insists that a leader must be prepared to act ruthlessly when circumstances demand it, even if it means tarnishing their reputation. If maintaining power requires deception or force, then so be it. Virtue is not about appearing good, but about securing stability and control. So, where does this leave kindness? Machiavelli does not completely reject kindness. Rather, he warns against its blind application. A leader should be flexible, able to wield kindness when it serves their objectives, but abandon it when necessary. The most effective ruler, he argues, is not one who is wholly good or wholly evil, but one who knows when to switch between the two. This is where we arrive at Machiavelli's most infamous claim. It is better to be feared than loved. At first glance, this sounds harsh, perhaps even cruel, but let's consider why he believes this. Machiavelli argues that love is fickle, but fear is reliable. If a leader relies only on kindness, they depend on the goodwill of their followers. But people's affections are unpredictable. They can turn against a leader in an instant. Fear, on the other hand, ensures obedience. Of course, Machiavelli warns that a ruler should avoid being hated. But between love and fear is the safer bet. Let's look at history. Many rulers have been remembered for their kindness, but how many of them maintained power? Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Napoleon, none of them ruled with kindness alone. They understood when to be generous and when to be ruthless. Despite their controversial methods, their legacies endure. History does not reward the excessively kind, but often glorifies those who understood the balance between virtue and pragmatism. Machiavelli forces us to confront an unsettling reality. Morality is not always practical, and excessive kindness can lead to failure. In leadership, ethics must be flexible. A ruler cannot afford to be bound by rigid moral constraints when survival is at stake. But what does this mean for us? We are not all rulers or politicians, but Machiavelli's lessons extend beyond the halls of power. In everyday life, blind kindness can be exploited. People who give endlessly without considering their own well-being often find themselves taken advantage of. In contrast, those who know when to be firm, when to say no, tend to command more respect. This doesn't mean we should abandon kindness altogether. It means we must be strategic about it. If we always act out of pure generosity, we risk becoming powerless. But if we understand when to be kind and when to stand our ground, we gain control over our own lives. Let's revisit one of Machiavelli's most controversial ideas: the end justifies the means. This phrase is often misunderstood as a justification for cruelty. But Machiavelli is not advocating for senseless brutality. He is making a pragmatic observation. Sometimes, difficult decisions must be made for the greater good. In extreme situations, a leader must choose between strict measures and complete collapse. Imagine a leader faced with an impending war. If they act with kindness alone, avoiding any action that could harm others, they may allow their nation to be destroyed. But if they take harsh but necessary steps, they may secure safety and stability. From Machiavelli's perspective, political success depends on knowing when morality can be applied and when it must be set aside. This is not about rejecting kindness, but understanding its limits. So, how should we interpret Machiavelli today? His insights are often considered cynical, even dangerous. But they reveal fundamental truths about human nature and power. If kindness is used wisely, it can be a strength. If applied blindly, it can be a weakness. Great leaders, in Machiavelli's view, are those who grasp this paradox. They do not see morality as an unbreakable rule, but as a tool, something to be wielded when useful and set aside when necessary. The ruler who insists on being morally perfect will struggle to survive in a world where power is rarely distributed based on virtue alone. Machiavelli doesn't ask us to abandon kindness, but to rethink its role. Kindness should not be an obligation that limits us, but a strategy that helps us achieve our goals. The leader who masters his balance, who understands when to show compassion and when to assert strength, will not only survive but thrive. And that brings us to the final uncomfortable question. Should we rethink our own relationship with morality? Is kindness always the right choice, or should it be applied selectively? Are we, like rulers, responsible for managing our own power dynamics? Perhaps the most Machiavellian lesson of all is that morality, like power, is not absolute. It is fluid, adaptable, and sometimes the most difficult decisions are the ones that shape history. What do you think? Is Machiavelli right? Should morality be flexible, or does true leadership demand a higher standard? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget, subscribe for more deep dives into philosophy, power, and the ideas that shape our world.